Hey everyone, I'm Rob Adams of the Actors Workshop, and you are in the Abyss. I can't tell you how much fun yesterday's episode was, and the feedback we got and everything like that. So I guess I'm gonna have to have Amy back for an episode or two. But it's also gotten my kids interested in doing an episode. They're all like, "Hey, can we do one on our birthday?" And Tyler's like, "Hey, my birthday's in October. We'll do one of our favorite horror films." And Emma's like, "I want to do something maybe best Disney films or whatever." And so it's kind of neat, that they have found an interest in doing this with us. So we'll see what we end up doing down the line. But we are getting back on track today with 2006, and a couple I want to mention. Just because I don't have them, either I don't own them or whatever reason. But number one, Devil Wears Prada, not necessarily a great movie, and I don't love it, and I don't think it's Meryl Streep's best performance. But I wanted to point it out because I wanted to talk about Stanley Tucci. He's just phenomenal. He's a great example of an actor who consistently does what he does, and it doesn't matter if he's playing one way or another. He's genuinely Stanley Tucci, and it comes across in the work. Another one, Gridiron Gang. I have a lot of respect for Dwayne Johnson, The Rock. I think he does a really good job. He knows who he is, and he lets that play into his work. And he does a really good job in this about the teenage kids who are in prison and them putting together a football team and him building the morale and all that stuff. It's a really good movie, good story. I'm kind of surprised I don't own it, to be honest with you. I think it's a good movie. Another one that I don't have, but I do own, is United 93, which of course is about the flight that was taken over by the passengers and ended up crashing in Pennsylvania. My buddy's a history teacher, and I lent it to him, and I have not got it back yet. So I just wanted to mention a couple of those and then get into our movies for 2006. First comedy, Talladega Nights. Not necessarily my favorite Will Ferrell film. It's good, it's funny, but I wanted to point this out because you guys know I love Gary Cole, and Gary Cole does a really good job in this film. And of course, everybody else does. It's fun. And if you watch certain movies based on who's in them, and then kind of realize this is their formula, and we talk about it, this is what they do and they do well, which Will Ferrell does. It's a good comedy, but I really do like Gary Cole, and I like everything that he's in. And this is just another thing that, as a supporting actor, does just a really good job. Next up, Little Miss Sunshine. Good, interesting, different kind of movie. I think they all do a really good job. But for me, it's about Alan Arkin. He is great. Kinnear does a good job, and the little girl is great, and like I said, the cast is good, and it makes it interesting because basically it's them together in this van for most of the movie. So it has to be conversation driven. It has to be what it is, and they do a good job. This is actually the copy I received during the SAG Awards time, so there was no reason to even buy it because you're getting it like this. So it's nice to have. All right, next comedy. We talked about it yesterday, or at least mentioned it. Me and Dupree, Matt Dillon, Kate Hudson, Owen Wilson. Owen Wilson's Matt Dillon's best man at their wedding and ends up moving in with him for a while, and then it's all the shenanigans that happens. And there's some really good stuff. There's some great one-liners. The famous Owen Wilson. There is old Dupree wailing away on himself again. That he's really funny in that. And once again, Owen Wilson's another one that understands that dry sense of humor, that delivery, that Owen Wilson-esque type, and he's really good. And the way that Matt Dillon and Kate Hudson deal with him makes for a really good, fun comedy. A little twist here. Part one of a three-part series, Da Vinci Code, kind of a mystery thriller. Once again, kind of like what I talked about with National Treasure. I like these kind of movies where they kind of tie in history and clues, and they have to bounce from one thing to another, trying to figure out this, and that. And it makes for a really good film. And what's cool about these films is it kind of makes you want to watch them again, because there's a lot of things you miss, or you need to sit there and watch and see what needs to be figured out, or whatever. But it makes for, like I said, a good mystery action thriller. Next up is another one we all know, The Departed. Leonardo DiCaprio, Jack Nicholson, Matt Damon. List goes on. It's star-studded. And you know, it's when you put a lot of good actors together, you know, you're going to get a pretty good, strong kind of shoot 'em up thriller type film. And this is another one like that. Is it my favorite? It's not. I think it's a bit overrated, but because of the cast, it makes it stronger. Although when I talked about Shawshank and I was telling you the story of, you know, the actor that was working on Shawshank and then also did The Departed, and he said he enjoyed doing Shawshank a lot more because they were together the whole time, whereas these guys were kind of coming and going, and which as an actor it makes it tough to, you know, when you're supposed to be working with someone and they're not necessarily there, or you're kind of they're going as you're coming. It makes it tough, and you get that sometimes. I remember my dad was telling a story when he was working on Murder, She Wrote, and he had a scene with Angela Lansbury. And you guys got to understand, Angela Lansbury was a star, right? At this point, it was her show, and she would come in and she would do her work and she would leave. So sometimes if you had scenes with her, you know, you had to work off a mop. You would be there for her close-ups, and then she would leave, and then someone would read off lines off camera with you. And they would hold a mop or something, and you would have to focus on that mop and talk to it like you're talking to Angela Lansbury. That happens sometimes, especially when big actors are working on different projects. So anytime you're able to get that whole group together, like they did in Shawshank, that's why that movie's so special. It doesn't take away from this film. Like I said, good cast, good film, but very different. All right, the sports movie for 2006, the Vince Papale story, Invincible, starring Mark Wahlberg, does a really good job. When Dick Vermeil took over the Eagles, I think in '76 or so, he kind of did a publicity thing for an open tryout, and Vince Papale came out and ended up making the team, and actually was with them for several years, was actually, I believe, their special teams captain. And you know, it's one of those stories where, you know, the odds are stacked against him, and he's going to prove everybody wrong. And, you know, he makes the most of the opportunity. Unfortunately, he was 1 year short of their Super Bowl year. They didn't win the Super Bowl, but they got to the Super Bowl, and it would have been nice to see him kind of get to that point with Dick Vermeil. But, you know, a couple years in the league, you know, made his mark. And, you know, this is a really good movie. The female star in this is Elizabeth Banks, and she does a really good job with Mark Wahlberg along with the supporting cast. And Greg Kinnear as Dick Vermeil does a really nice job, and it just makes for a really good, you know, Rudy type underdog sports film. All right, next up, I did not mention Mission Impossible 2 because I think it's the worst of the series, but I will talk about 3 only because it's kind of the bounce back from 2. And I like Philip Seymour Hoffman as the villain. You know, there's that scene in the movie, and this just shows you honesty in work. You don't have to yell and scream, or you don't have to do things when you kind of feel like you're supposed to. You just deal, right? We're working on that a lot in class. Understanding and dealing leads to believability. And, you know, there's a scene where they're in the plane, and Tom Cruise keeps threatening he's going to drop him out of the plane. And, you know, Philip Seymour Hoffman very simply looks him in the eyes, and, you know, I'm paraphrasing, but something along the lines of, I'm going to kill you, and then I'm going to find your wife, and I'm going to kill her, and all of that kind of stuff. And it's just so simple and honest in that Philip Seymour Hoffman. It's horrible, but you get the idea. But I really liked Mission Impossible 3, and I think, like I said, it got him back on track after 2 being marginal, in my opinion. And then I think the later ones kind of really get going again, but I wanted to mention that, especially for Philip Seymour Hoffman. Our runner-up was my number 1 yesterday for rom-coms in 2006, and that's The Breakup. Vince Vaughn, Jennifer Aniston, they do a really nice job together. Their banter, their energy. And you add Jon Favreau and Jason Bateman and, you know, Joey Lawrence Adams, I think, or Joey Lauren Adams. As Jennifer Aniston's best friend, and you have a really good cohesive group, and the banter and the energy and the way they play off each other makes for a really good comedy that actually ends up sad. And what I like about this movie is, and I'm going to ruin it right now, so if you haven't seen it, you know, it is what it is. You've had 14 years. is they don't end up back together. And sometimes, you know, movies always want to end with that happy story at the end or that fairy tale ending, and this is just more of a truthful ending, and I kind of like that. And it's got some really good moments. Of course, the part where they're at the dinner and they, you know, sing loner owner of a lonely heart by Yes, you know, lose yourself, you know, that it's really good. There's a lot of fun moments. So if you haven't seen it, check it out. And if you have, it's one of those ones you can watch again and again and again. But number one for 2006, The Prestige. It's great. Interesting, unique story with really good acting. Hugh Jackman, Michael Caine, Scarlett Johansson, Christian Bale as the bass. And they do a really good job working together. And Christian Bale versus Hugh Jackman, right? Batman versus Wolverine, if you will, because this is a Christopher Nolan film. Just do such a good job as rival musicians and trying to outdo each other with the next big trick and the lengths they go to get to that point, and it just makes for a fun thriller. And then David Bowie playing Tesla in this film, which is awesome. He does such a good job. You really believe you're watching Tesla. I mean, it's really well done. It's a really good film. This was a double dip for me. This is one I owned on DVD that I had to get the Blu-ray just because I love the way it's shot. I love the film. I like the old time feel to it, but then, you know, the acting just kind of brings it all together, and it's a really good film. So for 2006, The Prestige is my number one. All right, real quick on the music side, I want to talk about a band led by guitar player Gus G, who also does the writing for them. And this is, you know, he's played for Ozzy and other bands, but this is his baby, Firewind. I think this is like their third or fourth album. I really like this one. I think it's my favorite of all of theirs. I just love the way it plays, and it's really strong. It's kind of a melodic hard rock metal type sound, but really good voice on the vocals. Really good band to check out. Next up, you know, we talked about Tim Ripper Owens, who was the premise of the movie Rockstar, who got the opportunity with Judas Priest, then eventually left and went to Iced Earth, and then kind of went solo. And this was his first like big solo album. It's called Beyond Fear. It's actually a band, and it was, you know, led by him. Unfortunately, he only did one album. This is it. Opens up with a great hard rocker, Scream Machine, and it just goes from there. But another one, and it goes to show you once again, this guy worked hard, got opportunities, and even though the Judas Priest thing didn't work out after several years, he's gone on to do a lot of different things, and that's why I wanted to point this out. So that's called Beyond Fear. We talked about Lacuna Coil a couple episodes ago. This was Karma Code. This was actually the first one I bought of theirs, which was new at the time. So I guess I bought it in 2006. I really enjoy it. It has a lot of good albums. And I actually think I enjoy this one the most, probably because it was the first one I got, but also because I think their music's changed a little bit over the years. It's still good, and I like some of the songs, but this one I can just put in and listen all the way through. I really enjoy it. Number one for 2006, Iron Maiden's A Matter of Life or Death? A Matter of Life and Death, excuse me. I should know that. A Matter of Life and Death. When they went on tour, they actually played this album in its entirety. And then, you know, for the encores, they played some of their bigger hits. And I thought that was kind of interesting because, to me, since Bruce came back to the band and Adrian Smith came back to the band, this was their strongest album up to this point. The other ones were great, but I think this one was their strongest one up to this point. You know, leads off A Different World, then goes into These Colors Don't Run, Brighter Than a Thousand Suns. Brighter Than a Thousand Suns is one of my favorite all-time Iron Maiden songs. It's definitely my favorite of the newer era of their music. You know, Out of the Shadows, For the Greater Good of God, The Reincarnation of Benjamin Bragg. I mean, it's just so powerful. And like I said, of these newer albums, if they were ever going to play one in its entirety live, it was going to be this one, which is really cool. And I'm glad I got to see that, because, you know, when you see a band as many times as I've seen bands like Rush and Iron Maiden and stuff, you want to see something a little different, you know, and to be able to do that, you know, shows that you can really stand on, you know, yeah, your hits and your classics, but also your new work as well. So, you know, I really love this album. I actually, like 2 days ago, listened to it. It's in entirety again, and it's just a great flow and listen to, and I really like it. Eddie, you can see him. He's up on top of the tank here. and in a different version of him on the flag. But just a really, really good, solid record. So for 2006, Iron Maiden, Matter of Life and Death. And then, like I said, on the film side, The Prestige. So there you have it. Once again, I appreciate you guys watching. I appreciate the comments I'm getting. Keep them coming. I'm enjoying it. And we'll keep rolling. We got 2007 coming up. I hope you enjoy your day. We'll see you tomorrow.